Hello, my dear friend. Today I have for you another very interesting story about a guy who got messed up by a demon. Keep this video with a like and send it to your friends. More stories you can see on my channel. Enjoy watching. This world was the same as all the others. But one day 18 years ago, something incredible happened. A tower appeared in the middle of the huge megalopolis, which was far above the clouds. But along with this tower, many different gates appeared, where monsters, goblins, orcs, and even flying snakes came from. At that moment when it seemed that this world had come to an end, no modern technology could defeat these monsters. But it was still better than hope. Along with the emergence of monsters, a small handful of people with superhuman abilities also appeared. Only they could save the world from complete destruction. They called themselves players. Each of them had exceptional abilities and incredible strength. The players became the hope of humanity and emerged as a new force. In the realities of the new world, players became a symbol of wealth and an object of envy. Every person wanted to become one of the players. Despite the apocalypse on the street, ordinary people tried to move on with their lives. Our hero worked as the most ordinary food delivery courier. The money he earned was barely enough for food, let alone a decent life. One day he received an order to the player's office. His life was simply insignificant compared to the player's. Every person in the world knew every hero by name, and his name was an empty space. While going to his next order, he saw that another new hero had appeared. He was 18-year-old Yoo Seo-woo, originally from South Korea. Unfortunately, not everyone is as lucky in life as this guy. Interesting. What unique abilities did this young guy have? There were rumors that he owned a cheat key, the most prominent of all superpowers. Players who possessed such abilities were incredibly rare. Sometimes they were even compared to monsters. Having been staring at the billboard, he did not notice how the traffic light turned green. After all, his dream since childhood was to become one of the players. He finished his shift and came home. He was incredibly upset. After all, the new hero was not even born yet when the gates opened, and the whole world already knows him. And as usual, he has to go back to work early tomorrow morning. While walking home, he noticed that there was a bunch of letters in his mailbox. He couldn't believe his luck. He really got an answer from the player's office. What if he also becomes one of them? Going through letters in the hope of finding that most cherished thing. He comes across letters about loans, medical fees, and even school bills. Not finding the desired letter, he exhaled heavily and said, "And what was I waiting for? It's probably time to get used to the fact that I'm an ordinary person, and I'm not destined to become a player." Not finding the desired letter, he exhaled heavily and said, "And what was I waiting for? It's probably time to get used to the fact that I'm an ordinary person, and I'm not destined to become a player." His sister was an excellent student, so she did her homework late into the night. He asks his sister, "Is Mom sleeping?" "Just fell asleep. Today she sleeps better than usual." Their mother was seriously ill. Their mother could not move independently. She needed constant care. Suddenly, my sister takes out a cake that she baked herself and shouts, "Happy birthday!" The guy was pleasantly surprised that she didn't forget about his birthday. He asked his sister, "Where did you get the money for the cake? Did you really spend the money I gave you on new clothes?" The sister, smiling, says to him, "What are you talking about? I also have a lot of money. If you don't, then I'll eat everything myself." Holding a plate of cake, she was hiding some kind of letter. Maybe this is it? Our hero loved chocolate cakes. It was so cute that his sister remembers it. She bought it from a very famous store. It was clear from her that she really spent the money not on clothes, but on a gift for her brother. Jung was not just a brother to her, but a dear person who helped and supported her in everything. Jung thanked his sister. "Thank you. Thanks to you, I can even eat cake on my birthday." When suddenly the sister takes out a letter and says, "Maybe you should read the letter before you start. Come here, I'll read your letter first." Jung, I thought it was a simple sweet letter of congratulations from his sister. But is this really so? He opens the letter, suspecting nothing. Opening the sheet, he saw that it was an invitation to the player. From this moment on, our hero's life will not be the same. He couldn't contain his emotions. He shouted to the whole house, "I'm a player." His lifelong dream came true. Sister. She was incredibly happy for him that she couldn't even hold back her tears. In a trembling voice, she will tell him, "I wanted to give you a surprise, so I pulled it out of the mailbox." She threw herself at him with a hug, just screaming with joy. Jung, he couldn't believe what he had done. Now he's a player. Now their life will completely change. He will have enough money to cure his mother, the person dearest to him, who always supported him. She believed that he could become a player. The next morning, Jung comes to the Korean Players Association. It was an incredibly huge skyscraper. However, against the background of the tower, it seemed like a toy. As soon as he enters the office, he is greeted by an assistant who greets him as a Kim Gi-kyu player. He was surprised that anyone was greeting him at all. The assistant began to bring him up to date. She said, "If you say the information window, the player information will appear. Try saying this." He decided to ask what the question marks next to the unique ability meant. The assistant's face changed in an instant. "Congratulations, you have unique abilities. Question marks only mean that they have not yet been identified. I wonder what abilities Kim Gi-kyu has. All his life, he thought that he was an ordinary guy, and that nothing awaited him in the future. This is how it happens in life. In just one day, everything changed dramatically. He also became a player and has a unique ability." The assistant was simply delighted. She could not contain her emotions. I shouted to the whole hall, "Congratulations, the owner of a unique ability." This behavior of the girl greatly frightened the guy. After all, he's not used to anyone paying attention to him. Seeing that the guy is very worried, the assistant tells him, "Calm down. Your coach will come soon and explain everything in detail." I heard someone approaching from behind. She turned around and said, "Ah, Mr. Coach, you have already arrived." A moment later, she almost lost consciousness. After all, the coach of our hero was the player Woo. He was one of the greatest players. Is he really going to be Kim Gi-kyu's mentor? "If you allow me, may I show this gentleman in?" Yoosuk asked. And his exploits were legendary throughout the world. Kim couldn't believe that all this was happening to him. "Did he ask the coach for me?" To which Yoosuk replied, "Yes, not intentionally, but it so happened that I overheard your conversation. I wonder how their training will go." Yoosuk looked intently at our hero, straight into his soul. With dead eyes, he said, "You have unique abilities. It remains to find out which ones exactly." According to the rules, the assistant had to accompany the hero. But in this case, an exception could be made. But do not forget that the player is not only wealth and fame, but also an incredibly big risk, because they have to fight monsters from another world. Right in the player's office, there was one of the portals that led to the tower. Yoosuk suggests going into this portal. Despite her fear, Kim agrees to it. However, the portal was cleared many years ago, so there was no need to worry about it. As soon as they entered the tower, hundreds of orcs immediately began to run towards them. Who asks, "Were there always so many monsters on the first floor?" Yoosuk says, "I heard that sometimes there are overlaps over time and monsters accumulate. I'm also the first to see this." Kim was incredibly amazed how you can be so calm when hundreds of monsters are running towards you. It was impossible to come up with a better situation for the first lesson. Thanks to this progression of circumstances, Yoosuk will be able to explain everything much faster. 10 years ago, this was the first test for players. It was called the test, 100 Goblins. Its results were quite plausible, but it was banned due to its dangers. After all, players without proper experience did not know what to do with them. Yoosuk was serious. Speak. This test was aimed at players below the 10th level to determine their abilities. Thus, this test measured the player's potential if he killed 100 goblins without using skills in a certain time. For example, if this task takes 4 or 5 hours to complete, then you become an advanced player. If 2 to 3 hours, by a ranked level player, well, if it takes just an hour, we can say that you have high-ranking abilities. Hearing this, Kim was simply amazed. It was simply amazing how you could deal with 100 goblins in just an hour. Yoosuk, without any difficulty, deals with the monsters one by one. And at the same time, he manages to tell something else. And finally, time for the owner of unique abilities. 10 minutes. Yoosuk also had abilities. His power was freezing. In just 47 seconds, Yoosuk dealt with 100 goblins. That is why those with unique abilities are simply amazing. Kim was horrified by what he heard. He asks his teacher, "Wait, a top-ranked player has an hour and I have 10 minutes? But he did not yet know that what ordinary players take several years to achieve, those with unique abilities can master in a few months. A violet aura of incredible power is formed around Yoosuka. And he says, the growth rate and their potential are so beyond imagination. He knew what he was talking about, and he himself had a unique ability. The teacher asks the student, "Mr. Gi-kyu, do you know the Angela Guild?" To which Kim answered him, "Yes. I heard that there is a very young ranker in this guild." The Angela Guild was considered one of the strongest, if not the strongest, in the whole world. Yoosuk says, "Most of the guild members passed the Goblin Test in less than 3 hours. But I plan to create a guild that is much superior to Angel's Guild. To achieve his goal, he needed capable players, especially with unique abilities like Kim Gi-kyu. I hope you will push your limits more than once, and someday we will meet again in the tower." These words greatly inspired Kim. After all, he could not even dream of such a thing. It's time for Kim to show what he can do. This was the first monster in his life, but far from the last. He needed to find out exactly what ability he had. So he decides to try to snatch the goblin's axe out of his hands with the power of his mind. 5 years later, the next players came to the first level. An unfamiliar man watched the battle from the bushes. Suddenly a player comes to him and asks for forgiveness for being late. Apparently this man with glasses was someone's teacher. An unknown player simply divided the goblin into two with his blade. After this attack, his strength was exhausted. Watching the player, the teacher, and all the students were surprised at how out of breath he was. They had never seen anyone pass the test before. 100 goblins. What a surprise. The unfamiliar player turned out to be our Kim Gi-kyu. Opening the information window, he shouted to the entire tower, "Damn! I received an invitation from the tower at the age of 18. He also turned out to be the chosen one with unique abilities. But after 5 years, it takes me a whole hour to destroy at least one goblin." Yeah. Progress was obviously not the best, and the reason for all this was that during these 5 years, he never found out what unique ability he possessed. Friend, out of nowhere another goblin jumps out of the bushes. But over these 5 years, our hero has developed some good skills, and with just one swing of his blade, he dealt with him. It was a team training. Each of the heroes did their best. Each of them had more than 10 killed goblins. These players were Kim's students. Together with him, they increased their level. Now goblins are easy for them. Raising a low level is very simple. Then tomorrow we'll go up to the second floor. See you in the morning at the entrance. Kim was a good mentor. One of the students asks, "Is he really that famous?" The second one answers him, "Of course I heard the famous one too." The reasons for his fame? There were several rumors. The first is that he has a unique ability. But these are just rumors. If this were true, would he be here? I also heard that of all the players he is the first from the bottom. He's not even a ranker. Everyone gossips in the corners, but no one can deny. This guide has one nickname among the players. Behind his back they called him, a player who cannot improve his level. It's just that his time has not come yet. Kim will yet show himself at his best. When he finishes his work as a guide, he comes to this place. It was a remote corner on the ground floor where other players did not look. He was greatly depressed by the thought that he had been on the bottom floor for the longest time. Rest. Kim heard something happening nearby. He decided to look around. Maybe someone needs his help. When suddenly he sees that one goblin has appeared. He decides to deal with it quickly, with one blow, until he noticed him. Kim is trying to silently approach this goblin from behind. However, this does not prevent the goblin from hearing him as soon as he comes out with cover. As soon as Kim got close enough to him to strike, the goblin attacked him with all his spear power. Kim, I didn't expect that an ordinary goblin would be so strong. He tried with all his might to overcome this goblin. Their battle lasted more than an hour. But nevertheless, after the battle with the goblin, he came to the guides department. It was possible to exchange trophies for money. If you sell the extracted crystal, it is 20,000 won. But if you subtract the cost of the potion, then no profit. For 5 whole years, he achieved nothing. As soon as he decides to enter the exchanger, a door opens in front of him from which the player exits. It was Theo. He was a top-ranking player. The first floor was his warm-up for breakfast. Kim asks Theo, "Have you already finished your work?" To which I received a positive response. All the players are developing rapidly, except him. Theo simply silently went about his business. It's time for Kim to exchange her trophy for a reward. Entering, he asks Shik-hyung, "Did something happen to Theo?" He was really very worried about him because they walked through the first floor together. And they were good friends. Shik-hyung was the chief manager of the conductor's department. The cheek blushed and became embarrassed. But he still said, "Those guests with whom you work today. From tomorrow the name will be taken over by Theo." Kim started shouting to the whole office. What? Why? Apparently they don't want to let him into the second floor until he can handle the first. Shik-hyung. I didn't understand why he was doing this, because everything was normal. Hiding his eyes, he tells him, "It seems they have heard rumors." Kim was not very surprised by this, but she was upset. In upset feelings, he leaves and says, "Damn. How does this relate to the work of a conductor?" Shik-hyung says after him, "Well, nothing can be done, because it's true. Even though it was true, it wasn't fair." Before he can leave the office, he hears on TV saying that the Angela Guild has reached the 75th floor. Yes, that's right. The presenter confirmed. The guild announced that they would conquer the 75th floor, which was still empty. Tomorrow morning, A departure ceremony is planned for the detachment near the gate in Seoul. It looks like there will be an amazing show tomorrow. For the first time in a long time, there will be something to see. Kim says to Sik-hyum. Everywhere they talk only about the player. These are ordinary people who didn't even come close to the tower. Another funny thing is that the gate can be opened anywhere. Anyone can become a player. Maybe this will happen in the future. It will be really cool if Guild Angela actually manages to get past the 75th floor. Next news. S-rank gates have appeared in the United States. Currently, the American government is going to make an official request for help to the Korean Association. Promises a decent reward to all participants. When suddenly Kim turns off the TV. Sik-hyum indignantly asks him, "What? Why did you turn off the TV? I was watching." But with this, I just sighed heavily. Kim, it was time to go home. They gave him an envelope containing his salary for the day. Unfortunately, these were mere pennies. Also, about Theo. He looks cold, but in reality they feel guilty towards you, so don't be offended by him. Sik-hyum was a good friend and overall a good person, but Kim understood everything perfectly. He says, "It's not his fault. There is no need to apologize for this. Tomorrow Kim needs to come early to take over his shift." Oh yes, I almost forgot to say that there was something in return for that work. One request has been received in your name. Such news could not but rejoice. Maybe this is finally the work that will allow him to reveal his talent. The next morning, Kim meets with a young player on the first floor. His name was Kim Sun-pil. Kim Gi-kyu also introduced himself. However, I saw the dream and heard a lot about it. I saw the dream. His cousin told me about our hero. Since Kim was the guide, he had to ask a couple of leading questions. Are you a leader? To begin, I will introduce the team members. On the left side in a black jacket stood Yoon Jae-won. In the middle, the guy with a hairstyle like a Lego man was Yoon Sun-woo, and finally the girl with red hair was Kim Han-eul. I address my students. Kim says, "So you probably already know. You need to go through the training floor in 5 days, starting today. I trust that everyone has spent enough time preparing for this. I will explain the rest along the way." Having finished his speech, Kim began to walk deeper into the forest. At the end of the first day of the training floor, the team decided to set up camp and rest. After all, tomorrow they have a very difficult road ahead. Kim, by nature, had an interesting talent for cooking. He prepared an incredibly delicious goulash for the whole team. When they sat down to eat, Yoon Jae-won decided to ask Kim, "Oh, by the way, Mr. Conductor, they say your level is not rising?" However, I saw a dream. I didn't like this attitude towards Kim. He believed that he had not reached his potential. Since he was a very kind person, he answered without any problems. "It's true. Ask if you are curious about something." Such questions no longer offend him. They only confuse him a little. During lunch, Kim asks the team, "How was your hunt today?" The smell of his goulash was simply driving me crazy, and it was impossible to think about anything else other than food. Everyone decided to share their experience with the guide. Someone was left with a couple of scratches. Someone thought it would be much worse. But don't forget that this is just a training floor. Kim decided to share his experience. The goblins on the first floor have poor weapons. Their movements are very noticeable. Today could be considered training for the upcoming battles. Kim says with a smile on her face, "Continue to always keep your eyes open and raise your level, then everything will work out. Unless you meet a keeper." Everyone around started shouting, "Who is the Guardian? What is he doing?" Guardians were the monsters that guarded the gates from players. They were on each floor. They were hunted by entire guilds or large groups. This only proved that the Guardians were the most powerful monsters on the floor. For trophies that fall from the keeper, you can get a lot of points and good items. However, they are very dangerous. Low-level players cannot handle them alone. Seeing the horror in the eyes of the team, Kim immediately began to calm them down. "Don't be too scared. We monitor the regeneration cycle. Plus, there is a guild that specializes in hunting, and the guardians of the lower floors can be quickly destroyed. Honestly, meeting a keeper is incredibly rare." Meanwhile, on the 4th floor in the border zone of the forest, a huge goblin was running. He was seriously scared. Although goblins don't know what fear is. While running away, the goblin tripped over a small pebble. But this was enough to catch up with him. With just a wave of his hand, the guardian of the 4th floor beheaded him. Meanwhile, the second day of training arrived. This means that they went up to the 2nd floor of the tower. Orcs were already waiting for them on it. They were much larger than goblins, but were much slower, so it was not so difficult. Day 3, 3rd floor. Both goblins and orcs were waiting for them on it. They won't be good allies anyway. Kim came up with the idea to start a feud between them over a small stone. And I must admit that this idea was simply excellent. It worked instantly. Also, thanks to him, it was possible to increase the level easily and safely. Now it's clear why Seok-woo-hyung recommended it so persistently. Seok-woo-hyung was the first person who introduced Kim to this world. Kim notices that the guy is keeping a diary. He decides to ask him, "What are you doing?" To which he receives the answer, "I am writing a diary. After receiving the invitation, I write it every day." This seems like a good idea. Who knows, maybe one day he will become a ranker and write his autobiography. Meanwhile, the team is getting ready to go to bed. It's not clear what awaits them tomorrow. All they have to do is hold out until tomorrow. The next test will be the 5th floor. I would like to find out as soon as possible what level they will have upon completion of training. Interestingly, there are also orcs and goblins on the 4th floor. They differ in slightly greater speed and strength. So they decided to do the same trick as yesterday. The next day, with the first star, their team decided to start completing the task. In the very first hour, they met a small detachment of orcs and decided to engage them in battle. Each member of the team coped with the task without any difficulties. In the morning alone, they had more than 20 orcs and goblins on their account. Kim watched their battle from the side, to help someone if something happens if they are in trouble. He notices that a sandstorm is starting. Oh no, not this. Sandstorms occur only on those days when the Guardians appear. And did he really not follow the schedule, and they came here on this day? You understand that they got into trouble that is too tough for me. Kim shouts, "Everyone is in cover. Finish quickly." During his long life as a guide, he understood one thing. Real learning. This is not a game. In a matter of seconds, you can lose your life. Jae-won retreats and falls to the floor. Left unarmed, a huge orc attacks him. It would seem that this is the end. But Kim Gi-kyu was not going to leave his comrades in trouble. And with the very first blow of his blade, he deprives the orc of his head. This is what the slightest inattention can lead to. Kim notices the sand cloud getting closer and closer. This could only mean one thing. The Guardian is here. When the cloud began to gradually develop, glowing red eyes could be seen. Sincere anger burst out. In addition to the Guardian himself, he was surrounded by a guard of the strongest orcs. They had never encountered anything like this before. They were not prepared to fight such enemies. The only chance of salvation was escape. And Kim understood this perfectly. Taking out a smoke grenade from his backpack, he shouted, "Everyone, prepare to escape!" Smoke covered everything within a radius of 40 meters. This could well have been enough to escape. The adrenaline level was just off the charts. 2 people from the team were slightly wounded. But their comrades did not abandon them in trouble. This was the perfect moment to break away from the Guardian. Having got out of the smoke, a logical question arose. Where to run? Since Kim was a guide, he said, "First, follow me." A few minutes later, they came running to a huge cliff at the foot of which there was a small cave. Having entered it, they breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, you can rest a little and patch up your wounds. They will never forget this meeting with the keeper. But the team wondered, what was it anyway? It seems it was just a huge orc. Breathing heavily, Kim says, "I think this is the Guardian of the 4th floor. I just don't understand why he appeared. We will still have to monitor the situation." Breathing heavily, Kim says, "I think this is the Guardian of the 4th floor. I just don't understand why he appeared. We will still have to monitor the situation." After a couple of minutes and catching my breath, the cry echoes throughout the cave. "Guide, Hanul doesn't come to her senses." What? Was this battle a success with losses? After examining her body better, Kim found a wound in the liver area. Barely noticeable black smoke was oozing from the cut, which meant that she was poisoned by goblin poison. If you don't do anything, you won't have much time left. However, he knew where he was going. Therefore, he prepared as necessary. No need to worry. With the antidote, she will recover quickly, Kim said. When we opened our first aid kit, we almost fell out. There was no antidote. Although he remembers very clearly how he put it there. And then he remembers that when they ran away, his backpack was open, and most likely the antidote simply fell out. No matter how much he was in a hurry, how could he make such an elementary mistake? We need to calm down. Panic definitely won't help. Kim understood perfectly well that without help, the girl would die within an hour. Therefore, he decided to go in search of those who could help them. Hearing this, the team was simply furious. They shouted and interrupted each other. "What? You can't do that. It is very dangerous." However, this was the only chance to save Hanul, As he left, Kim said, "Don't worry. I've been through the training floor many times ad nauseum. I'll go up the hill and send a sign that we need help." This was not the best idea of all since there was a guardian in the area. However, he had no choice. Coming out of the cave, he discovered that the orcs had become much smarter. Because of the guardian, the direction of movement of monsters has changed greatly. Therefore, it is impossible to predict their location. Kim went around all the paths known to him. However, at each of them I met entire squads of orcs. We must try to find another way. You can't be wrong, because there's only one smoke shell left. Although in the surrounding area, he decided to analyze his actions. At the current speed, I will reach the hill in 3 minutes. You need to quickly shoot the flash and return to the cave. He simply prayed not to meet the guardian. Oops, it turns out to be jinxed. Behind him stood an orc of incredible size. His eyes were like 2 torches and his fangs were the size of a huge sword. Now it's clear why the guardians are hunted by entire teams. Without even having time to react to the approach of the orc, he threw Kim back 100 meters with a swing of his blade. He miraculously survived. Suddenly, a smoke grenade in his backpack explodes. What gives him a chance to escape? It seems God himself wants him to survive. Damn it, we need to leave quickly. However, I'm not one of those people who falls into the same trap twice. Having risen from the floor, he pointed the rocket launcher into the sky. Having fired a signal flare, he understood that first he had to run as far as possible. Kim began to panic. But he learned something during the 5 years he spent in the tower. Only self-control and calm will help him survive. There is not a single player who knows these places better than him. Running along the 4th floor, he stumbles upon the much-desired gate to the 5th floor. Exam. He wanted more than anything to just rush there without thinking about anything. But he can't do this because of his family. And the comrades who remained there in the cave. He was tormented by doubts. All these 5 years he had been striving to get here. But he understood that with his first level, only death awaited him there. What should he do? Should you believe in luck and go to the 5th floor, or follow reason and stay here? Tears began to form in his eyes. He just didn't understand how he ended up here. His dream was just a few steps away from him. But this cannot be. It is difficult to reach the 5th floor, even on the 4th level. A moment later, he hears an incredible crash behind him. Is it really him again? Kim is trapped. The guardian will crush him like an ant. Standing at the entrance to the 5th floor, he realized that he had 2 options. Definite death now, or possible death there. There is no time to think. We must decide now. It was decided to move forward. What was waiting for him there ahead? Great fame and fortune or eternal emptiness? As soon as he entered the gate, white light filled everything around him. A voice from the void said, "You have entered the first examination hall. The player's details are being checked. You have fulfilled the conditions." After loading the floor, he found himself unconscious on a green meadow. And the voice says, "You have fulfilled the conditions." Since Kim Gi-kyu was still level 1, the difficulty was significantly reduced. I wonder what tests await him on this floor. An information window appeared in which it was written, "First test, goat hunting." What? Is this the same terrible floor that people with a low level are not allowed onto? Well, at least for Kim, this task will not be difficult. Hunting a goat is much easier than hunting goblins and trolls. Seeing his first task on this floor, Kim was very upset. Is it really possible that his abilities were rated so low? Well, let's go. Goat hunting is goat hunting. Kim completed the first task without any problems. After completing the first mission, he receives a notification that he has upgraded his class, and untested abilities have appeared. Maybe after all this time, he will finally find out what unique ability he has. And of course, for completing the mission, he receives a reward and unlocks the first achievement. Perfect clearance. The quality of his remuneration has increased. Kim Gi-kyu, of course, was very surprised, because he thought that death was waiting for him on this floor, but instead a harmless cattle hunt. But this is just the beginning. Not even a minute had passed before the sky turned black. Thunderclouds appeared. Apparently, it had begun. Darkness attacked Kim and tied his hands and feet. From the darkness comes a voice that says, "Who are you anyway?" Kim was overcome by panic. He did not understand what was happening to him and where he was. Apparently, this is the end. The voice from the darkness changed to a child's. He asked Kim, "Are you my master?" Kim was confused. "What other owner?" The voice kept saying, "Damn, and this fool who can't even answer is my master? Okay, there's not much choice. Quickly choose a name for me." I wonder why. Darkness. Kim. She can't understand why the darkness is asking to give it a name. There was no logic to it if she was going to finish him off. It was clearly evident from her behavior that he was in a hurry. In an insistent voice, he says, "Come quickly. Establish a connection with me." 10. Suddenly, a game notification pops up. Ego has requested to establish a connection with you. Will you establish a connection with the ego? What the hell is going on here? To establish a connection with the ego, you need to choose a name for it. A second later, Kim woke up in the hospital. But how could this happen? He did not remember anything after he was asked to establish a connection with the ego. Near his hospital bed stood his sister and Jung. They were overjoyed that he had woken up. As soon as Kim came to his senses, he asked, "Sister, did I press the call button?" After he met him, he almost died. He was lucky that he came to his senses so quickly. As it turned out later, Kim was found unconscious on the 5th floor 2 weeks ago. The doctors thought that he would never wake up, and he will remain in a coma for the rest of his life. Jung, I told him about everything that happened. How other players found him and that he lay unconscious for 2 whole weeks. When the office received information that a custodian had appeared on the 4th floor, the guild players went hunting for him. Noticing a flash in front of the entrance to the 5th floor, they ran there and found an angry guardian. However, he managed to escape. When Kim heard that the keeper managed to escape, he began to worry greatly. What happened to his team? But Kim calmed down a little when he heard that Mr. Songpil and the whole team were saved. They came to him and brought him Bacchus. Kim was incredibly happy that they were all alive, and their wounds had almost healed. And if they survived, then he did his job. The next day, Kim's mother called and he was already feeling much better. He told my mother, "We need to do a few more tests and we can be discharged." "What are you sorry?" "I'm not going down. Don't worry and relax." But for his mother, he will always be a little boy. This is how mother loves. His mother was very worried that he would go into debt to pay for his treatment. But therefore, there was no need to worry. Everything was covered by the insurance. At the end of the conversation, he says to them, "Is you John nearby? She's listening? Little sister, you don't have to come anymore. Look after your mom at home. I'll call when they tell you the exact discharge date, and we will finally see each other." He passed the 5th floor quite easily. He thought it would be much worse. And despite this, his level was still 1st. However, his journey to the 5th floor did not pass without a trace. He felt that something had changed in him. Deciding to check this out, he goes to the 1st floor. When the other players saw him, they were very surprised. Because just yesterday he was in the hospital. Every player on the 1st floor couldn't stop looking at him. He was very popular before, and even more so now. Kim didn't care what other players thought about him. He had a goal that he pursued tirelessly. One of the new players asks the others, "Why is he so famous?" His guide answers him, "There are various rumors about him. They say that he is the only conductor who has not been able to increase his role for 5 whole years. Kim, I'm solving a problem on the floor above to try out my new abilities." He did not fully understand what had happened to him, but he felt it within himself. However, this was not the only reason why he was famous. One of the new guides says, "Don't you know another reason for his popularity?" Having only the 1st level, he went to the 5th floor. His group was fighting with a pack of orcs and goblins when they were attacked by a guardian. However, he is famous for killing the tutorial. Arriving at the next floor, Kim decided to fight the goblin's organs. Previously, it took him an hour to eliminate just 1 goblin. But now, after killing the totalitarian, a mighty blade was in his hands, which endowed him with incredible power. Now, dealing with a whole squad of monsters is easier than ever for him. Was Ego, whom he met on the 5th floor, a powerful tutorial? It turns out that the newly acquired blade was the ego. He became attached to the Quim in the form of a ring. However, there was unfinished business. He had to choose a name. And who did he decide to call him? Lu.
Now everything becomes clear. This power that he felt was the ego.
Thanks to the alliance with him, I was able to deal with a whole crowd of monsters in a matter of seconds without any problems. I am sure that their union is capable of more. Now, in Kim's information window, the class was indicated, Ego Partner, and a unique ability, the ability to establish a connection with the ego. After Kim gave him a name, he also got an information window. The stupid level was 7th. Strength and agility 18 points. Physical and magic power 7 points. And Lu's skill was transformation accessory. Having collected trophies from the orcs, I got a whole backpack of precious stones. It seems like just yesterday he was trembling at the sight of orcs, and now he collects all these crystals. He didn't even feel tired after the battle. This is truly an amazing result in just one day. But do not forget that he has been walking towards this day for 5 whole years. But this was the merit not only of Kim, but also of Lu. A month earlier, Kim walked around the first floor in search of another orc, deciding to check my information window. He saw that he had special skills. Kim thought, after all, this was not a dream. I did the right thing by coming to the tower immediately after the hospital. If I go home, Jung will swear. It's better for her not to know that I've already left the hospital. For the first time in 5 years, there have been changes in the information window. I can't just sit there. And as it turned out, it was the right decision. What should we do now? How to use this now? It's good that the ability appeared, but it's no good if he can't use. Kim, I remember exactly that he gave this persistent voice a name. He shouted, "Lu!" Suddenly, a sphere with a red aura appeared in front of him. She exuded strength. From this sphere, a voice is heard that says, "You have called upon the ethereal Ego Lu." Kim was pretty scared. He obviously didn't expect this. Well, it doesn't have a form yet. Due to the player's lack of skill, the Lu form will be selected randomly. Kim jumped up with joy. There was finally hope that he would reveal his potential. For Lu's outer form, matter is absorbed in a disorderly manner. Kim shouted in surprise. What? Is matter absorbed? Apparently Lu needs material to create the mold. When suddenly Kim's clothes began to move as if on their own. Although not entirely, Lu decided to use his clothes as material for shape transformation. Already when Kim was lying in his underpants on Earth, Lu stopped absorbing matter. After Lu, he collected enough energy. A huge column of energy burst out of him, which destroyed everything within a radius of 100 melers. Lu, the demonic blade, has been transformed, which caused Kim's sincere surprise. Kim understood that he couldn't stay in his underpants in the middle of the forest, so he threw a woolen blanket over himself. And he began to think about what to do next with Lu. "Kim, I decided to ask the dagger, 'Are you Lu?' To which he answers, 'Aha, exactly, but I see you have high mental abilities.' God, he's so annoying, and I'll have to be with him all the time. Why do I need this?" Kim thought when he met Lu one-on-one for the first time. He didn't know yet that they would be best friends. Taking it in his hand, Kim asks Lu, "And what are you? Some kind of soul?" Lu answered him sarcastically, "You seem to be a completely stupid simpleton. But what are you then?" Kim began to examine his new blade in detail, when suddenly the onion screams, "Are you going to paw me? Well, you're a pervert." Out of anger, Kim stuck his sword into the ground. He sat down opposite him and asked, "Lu, can you move on your own?" "Well," he answers, "are you kidding me? I don't have legs." "Well, seriously, I can't do it yet, but later I most likely will." Kim thought it would be great if he could move around on his own. Suddenly he had another question. "Can you break the connection yourself and change the owner?" To which Lu replied with complete seriousness, "Only the owner has a choice. The ego can't do that." And the last question that interested Kim, "Can you harm me when you move on your own?" Be in deep thought. Well, a minute later I answered him, "I can attack. But if you die, the ego associated with you will also die. So in practice, this is impossible." It's amazing that their connection is so strong that when one dies, the other dies too. After hearing this, Kim had another question, and he asks Lu, "So, it turns out that you feel pain?" Lu shouted in fear, "Are you completely stupid? Naturally. If I can die, then I feel pain." This was the perfect moment to take revenge on him for all the bullying. Kim took a stone in his hand. Interestingly, Lu was a perfect ego, so he could feel all emotions, and if you work with him, then feelings. After their conversation, Kim was asked to include Lu's pain sensations. The choice was obvious. Let's go back to our days. The duet of Kim and Lu became known to every hero. After all, they dealt with entire tops of monsters without any problems. Even the Guardians did not have much difficulty for them. Plus, Lu could absorb the blood of orcs, thanks to which he received experience points, for which he increased his level and his skills. After another battle, Kim decided to ask Lu, "If you think about it, you've been wandering for a long time? Do you miss those times?" "Master, It's embarrassing to remember this. Even now, when I think about those times, I feel like a friend. I'm glad that you are my master. Lu answered. Lu is rarely kind, let alone admitting his feelings. Kim was very surprised that Lu was happy with him. However, there was a reason for this. Kim had a good and strong aura. By the way, the backpack was already full of trophies. Perhaps that's enough for today. I wonder how much money they will get for all these crystals. I'm getting ready to leave and say, how nice it is here. Master, is it true? Then next time, let's go to my tower A and beyond the gate. An unforgettable adventure beyond the gates awaited them ahead. The next morning, when Kim was about to go through the gate, his boss Hyung stopped him and said, "Don't go through the gate yet." Kim, with a surprised face, tells him, "What? Why?" I wonder how he even knew that Kim Yi-lu was going to go beyond the gates. Shik Hyung says, 4 rankers from America died there this week. They thought it was a rank F gate, but it turned out to be a rank C gate. The fact is that recently rescuers are increasingly discovering strange gates. This has never happened in 23 years. It started just a month ago. There were more and more abnormal gates every day. It's a strange coincidence that exactly a month ago Kim met Lu. Was he somehow involved in this? Kim, I thought it was just a coincidence. Lu clearly couldn't be involved in this because he was with him the whole time. Seeing that Kim did not take his words seriously, Sik Hyung says, "I'm not asking you to never go there. It's just better to page this place while it's dangerous. I understand you perfectly because you can finally use your unique abilities. But I ask you to be patient a little." They seemed to listen to his words. Hyung praised him for his work today and told him to go home. When Kim was already near the door, Shin Hin shouted, "Tutorial killer!" Kim shouted at him irritably, "Hey, don't call me that!" However, Kim was haunted by the thought that more money could be earned behind the gates than in the tower. Kim understood that the boy Hyung only wanted the best for him, but he cannot act differently for the credit debt. Moreover, it is unlikely that Kim will run into a special gate. What's so terrible that could happen? After looking through the vacancies, Kim saw that a hunter was required who would go beyond the gate. He can't do anything other than go there. At lunchtime that day, Kim agreed to meet the leader of this team at a coffee shop that was in the city center. A man approached him and introduced himself. "I am the team leader. My name is Ha Sun-soo." Kim tells him, "I called you. My name is Kim Gi-kyu." Very nice. Before he even has time to sit down, Sung-soo asks Kim, "Will this be your first time hunting for the gate?" You confused me a lot from such a question, but nevertheless answered, "Yes, the first one." Kim saw that Sung-soo was not happy with this answer. "However, I still studied strategy and stuff." Kim said, "Well, you're right for us. Here's your contract. The division of production, the fine, and generally standard contents are indicated here. The place where they will hunt is Guri Station. Yes, you will have to come the day after tomorrow at 2 Orosino, of course, not to be late." Kim decided to take a closer look at the contract. What if he finds some pitfalls there? Before they go hunting, there are a few things you need to know. There are 2 types of gates. One-time gates that disappear after clearing them, and continuous gates that can be hunted over and over again. Unlike one-time gates, continuous gates do not have such a large reward. But the capture strategy is already known in them, so many people go there because of the lower risks. They gathered at the appointed time and place. Having finished checking their equipment, they hit the road. There was a strong sense of unease in the air. Maybe all these heroes came from an advertisement just like Kim. However, 2 of the heroes clearly knew each other. Maybe they hunted together before? I wonder if anyone here has unique abilities? Suddenly, one of the players shouts, "We are waiting." He really scared the rest of the players. What should they expect? They just arrived. After listening, the other players heard strange sounds in the darkness, similar to the cry of a wounded animal. Began. The archer says, "They are approaching." All the heroes were ready for battle. However, no one knew who was waiting for them in the dark. A minute later, a whole crowd of zombies runs out of the darkness. Their eyes glowed with the same red fire as those of the goblins. The platoon commander shouts, "Tank, forward!" After a successful tank attack, the rest of the heroes also joined the battle. Thanks to the fact that their team had an excellent archer, the other players did not have to worry about being attacked from behind. After all, he was covering for them. There were too many of them. Plus, they were not so easy to destroy. Even 5 hits were not enough to kill one monster, and there were hundreds, if not thousands of them. Suddenly, let Kim Yi-lu step in. They destroyed any monster without any problems. It only took a couple of blows with the blade to destroy 10 monsters. The other players, seeing how easily Kim dealt with these zombies, were simply amazed. This can't be. It's his first time here. How can he deal with them so easily? After the battle, the tank comes up to Kim and tells him, "Wow, that was amazing. Thanks to you, we got it done quickly." The rest of the players began to ask him who he was. One of them asks, "You said you have the 7th level, right? It feels like we're on a walk." Kim didn't want to tell them the whole truth, so she simply said, "I was just lucky. Don't pay attention." Thanks to Kim, they finished the boss in a matter of minutes. Tank asked Kim to take him on his team after they completed the mission here, to which Kim simply laughed. Kim looked at the leader of this group and thought, it seems that this doesn't really bother him, but still, it's a little ugly to behave this way in front of the leader. And why doesn't this mysterious girl in a robe leave him a single step? The rest of the team bombarded Kim with compliments. In general, today we owe you, Mr. Gi-kyu. Kim was very embarrassed by this attitude of the players. He told him, "Stop it. It's not worth it." No matter how he didn't, it was true. Having replenished their supplies and rested a little, they again need to slowly move out. Kim decided to ask Lu how he was doing. "Zombie blood doesn't taste good, Master," Lu said. After an hour of travel, they come across a huge cage no less than a 10-story building high. Here she is. Boss room. Coming closer to the cage, I thought, are these huge iron bars really needed to imprison the boss? How big is this boss? Before going inside, the squad leader decided to tell them the plan for how they would attack the keeper of the Talon Gate. To begin with, I want to say that Talon is huge. When suddenly Tank interrupts him and says, there you go. Do you really think we didn't check such basic information in advance? Stop wasting time, let's go quickly. Kim was amazed at the impudence of the tank. How can you treat your leader so disrespectfully? Song-soo cannot stand it and shouts, "Listen anyway." Behind the gates, one mistake can endanger the entire team. Damn, this is so infuriating. In general, the tank was a very good and kind person. He would never leave his friends in trouble. However, he was intolerant and quite hot-tempered. Suddenly the girl's eyes glowed red, just like monsters. There was clearly something wrong with her. She was constantly silent and did not leave her side. But literally a second later, her eyes returned to normal again. Honestly, she scares the hell out of me. Kim noticed that her eyes turned red for a second. He seems to be the only one who noticed it. Sun-soo says, "I'll explain it again for the especially gifted. First, using a special solution, we melt the iron rods and enter the boss's room. Then we must climb onto Talon's back. Then I'll hit him first with an explosive arrow. He will get angry and start waving his fists. At this moment, you need to keep a safe distance and carefully monitor his actions. Tank, sleep, Hun. You must block his blows. The success of our mission directly depends on this. Talon's power was beyond the understanding of an ordinary person. At this point, the melee and ranged shooters should deal as much damage as possible. You will have about 10 seconds to do everything, and the most important moment when he bends down to change tactics. At this moment, Talon's defensive powers increase threefold, and blows no longer affect him. However, with such strength as Mr. Gi-kyu's, it is possible to cause little damage. During his attack, the voice assistant says, the degree of fusion with Lu has been increased. Now you can use Lu's power even more effectively. It was just in time. Kim struck the final blow with all his might. For a moment, it even seemed as if space was bent from his blow. What? This is impossible. Kim destroyed Talon in defensive mode with one blow. The rest of the players were not only surprised, their jaws dropped at this. After killing the Guardian, an information window opens in front of Kim. It said, you get additional experience points. Thanks to Talon's blood, your stats have increased. You get the cannibalism skill. What? What kind of skill is this? What opportunities does it open up for our hero? Cannibalism. Recovering physical strength by eating a corpse. It's hard to imagine a worse ability.